Back at Isawa's base, two guards who had been assigned to watch duty saw Isawa approaching, looking visibly shaken. Alarmed, they quickly alerted the others and brought him inside for interrogation. The atmosphere was tense as they demanded to know where he had been for the past 5 days. Isawa gulped, nerves jangling, but he stuck to the plan. Miki had called the gang, the quartet, and instructed Isawa to return to his base the day after tomorrow. Both Isawa and Sato were shocked by this. Sato argued that being gone for 5 days already looked suspicious, and delaying further would only make it worse. But Miki had anticipated this. She explained that the plan was for him to return and inevitably face questioning. His story was simple. While scouting, he was attacked by zombies and panicked. Mori, the ruthless leader of the gang, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. And then what? He demanded. Isawa, keeping his voice steady, recounted the lie they had rehearsed. I panicked and ran. I got lost, wandered for 2 days, and then stumbled upon another group of survivors. A large group, about 50 guys with combat training. The room fell silent as Mori's fists clenched. And what did you tell them? He growled, ready to strike. Isawa quickly denied any betrayal. I told them I was alone and managed to escape. I came back here to warn you. Mori didn't look convinced, so he turned to Saruwatari, the brains of the group, a man with a calculating mind hidden behind nerdy glasses. Saruwatari pushed them up on his nose and asked, if they were really that desperate for food, why would they feed you? And why aren't you starving? Isawa's heart raced. They fed me just a little, enough to keep me alive. Saruwatari wasn't buying it. And how did you escape? I waited for the night patrols to change shifts, then slipped away, Isawa replied, but Saruwatari had already made up his mind. You're lying, Saruwatari said, his voice cold. It's more likely that you've switched sides. Maybe they let you go, hoping you'd lead us into a trap. The lackeys in the room murmured in agreement. To them, it made perfect sense. A weakling like Isawa surviving out there alone. Impossible. He must have had help, and now he was back as a spy. Or, Saruwatari continued, his tone turning darker, back on purpose to be a bargaining chip. One of the lackeys asked the question on everyone's mind, should we kill him? Mori, however, wasn't so hasty. We can't be sure if he's a spy or not. He might have been followed, but questioning him further is pointless. All his words could be lies. Mori made the decision to lock Isawa up, despite Isawa's desperate pleas. But one of Mori's henchmen grabbed Isawa by the shoulder, leaning in close. Maybe you're not a spy, but you might have been followed. Either way, you screwed up. Without warning, the lackey punched Isawa hard in the stomach, causing him to double over in pain and fall from his chair. As Isawa gasped for breath, the lackey sneered, why bother locking him up when we could just feed him to the zombies? Mori shook his head. No, if he is a spy, he's more valuable alive. He's a bargaining chip. Despite his words, the lackey continued beating Isawa, leaving him bruised and bloodied, muttering that he was lucky to be alive. Isawa, barely conscious, realized the terrifying truth. Everything that had just happened was part of Miki's plan. She had predicted that they would think he was a spy, anticipate his capture, and even foresee the brutal beating. It was as if everyone was dancing in the palm of her hand. Miki's confidence came from knowing the type of scum they were dealing with. Mori, the ruthless leader, Saruwatari, the calculating brain, Sato and Kamigawa, the brute enforcers. Miki had predicted that Mori would see Isawa as a valuable bargaining chip, even with his doubts. But Sato, filled with worry, asked the question that had been gnawing at him. What if Mori does something unexpected? Miki's gaze hardened. Though she was confident in her plan, she couldn't guarantee Isawa's survival. The entire operation depends on him, she stated bluntly. If he's not willing to go through with it, we won't help. Sato shouted, trying to sway Miki, but she remained resolute. My priority is our group, she said firmly. What's yours? After a long silence, Isawa made his decision. Despite the danger, he chose to stick with the plan. If this is the only way to save them, then so be it, he said, his voice trembling but determined. I've only known them for 3 weeks, but they're my friends. Getting beaten up is a small price to pay if it means saving them. Miki grinned, pleased with his resolve. Meanwhile, the lackeys turned to Mori, still uneasy about the 50 men Isawa had mentioned. What do we do now? Sooner or later, they're going to attack. But Mori remained calm, a sinister smile on his face. It was only a matter of time before someone made a move. Let them come. The clash was imminent. The stage was set, and the crash was about to begin. Sato was behind the wheel of the truck, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. The truck swerved dangerously close to a fence, scraping against it before he managed to regain control. His heart pounded in his chest, He could barely drive properly, let alone in a situation like this. But here he was, tasked with a crucial role in their plan. You might wonder why someone so inexperienced was in the driver's seat. To understand that, we need to recall the plan. Their group consisted of 50 men and 30 women, 80 people in total. If a fight broke out, about 30 men would likely side with the quartet, but Iwasa doubted everyone would join the fray. Some might just provide support by relaying orders or handing out supplies. Miki, ever confident, didn't see this as a problem. Her fighters could handle the combatants, she said, but Iwasa was concerned about the non-combatants. They could be used as shields or, worse, killed. Miki brushed off his worries. They won't bother using human shields, she assured him. Iwasa was puzzled by her certainty. Why not? Miki referenced the 2 magic spells from the story Isawa had shared earlier, but that only left him more confused. Meanwhile, back at the quartet's base, they were also strategizing. The mention of 50 fighters worried them, given they only had 30 combat-ready members. Saruwatari, the brains of the group, was skeptical of Iwasa's story. He suspected either the numbers were inflated or, worse, there were even more enemies than they were being told. But Mori, the leader, was unfazed. Even if they outnumber us, we've got the home advantage, he declared confidently. Their base was a fortress of death, after all. Iwasa continued explaining to his group. The base was an open space, allowing clear visibility of any approaching threats. All other entrances had been blocked off, leaving only the front. The surrounding parking lot, encircled by fences, provided no cover. Anyone approaching would be exposed, and one of the leaders, Sudo, was a skilled weapon maker. He'd even crafted his own bow from store tools. Homemade or not, its impact was real. One lucky shot could be fatal. With such defensive advantages and ranged weapons, they might seem invincible. But Miki wasn't impressed. That's just what they think, she said with a smirk. With their confidence in their stronghold and fighting force, they'd likely deploy 30 or so fighters, believing they'd already won. This, Miki explained, was why they wouldn't use women or weak men as shields. Mori would be focused on the battle ahead, confident in his strength. But Iwasa remained uneasy about the possibility of hostages. Miki, however, believed there were others like Iwasa among them, people who longed for freedom but needed a leader. And that's where Iwasa would come in. If he rebelled, others would follow. The quartet wouldn't risk putting a potential traitor on the front lines, nor would they trust the weaklings, fearing they might betray or flee. This meant Iwasa would only face Mori's most loyal fighters. Mori wouldn't care if he was outnumbered. He believed he was unstoppable. If he won, everyone would fall in line completely, and his grip on power would be unshakable. Given Mori's mindset, he'd likely keep only those he trusted close by, leaving the elderly and loyalists as the supply line, while isolating the untrustworthy in the employee lounge. The first and fourth floors would house the armed combatants, and the women would probably be stationed on the rooftop, where they lacked lookouts. Iwasa was stunned by Miki's ability to predict their strategies so accurately. He explained further, noting that when people receive dubious information, they can't help but doubt it. This doubt leads to guessing, and that's where they'd start to unravel. The 2 spells Miki had mentioned were psychological tactics. The quartet would start doubting whether there really were 50 enemies, or if there were traitors among them. Miki had claimed they had 100 men. Mori's group might have resorted to using human shields. If they knew there were only 3 of them, the plan would fall apart. They'd spread out, making it impossible to isolate the non-combatants. By planting the seeds of doubt -50 enemies and a potential traitor, the quartet would huddle together, making them easier targets. Non-combatants would be isolated into a safety area, just as Miki had planned. Miki's eyes gleamed with pleasure as she finished her explanation. Humans are such interesting creatures, she mused. Even Sato, as nervous as he was, couldn't deny the brilliance of Miki's strategy. Her smile was angelic, but her words were devilish. Iwasa thought so too. With everything set, it was time to act. This was Sato's moment, and it terrified him. Me, he stuttered. Miki smiled reassuringly. You can handle it. Besides, we all have our own roles to play. Sato was on the verge of panic. Miki noticed his fear, and reassured him that he had the strongest army in the world. But to Sato, that itself is what scared him the most. Miki had no choice, leaned in with a wink, voice sweet and soothing. If you do well, I'll give you a reward, she said playfully, making him blush. Everyone stared at him, including Iwasa, who knew exactly what was going on. Sato had no choice. He complied, knowing that all he had to do was follow orders. Miki grinned, her excitement palpable. Let the show begin.